As we all know, I am rather partial to a helping of history now and again, and today, boys and girls, we are going to a buffet. Dear God, you're going to find this tedious, but I am buzzing. This is Baalbek, an ancient Phoenician city which nowadays sits only actually about 6 miles from the Syrian border, and this is unquestionably, and I mean that unquestionably, the greatest site of Roman ruins in the entire world. Just look at the sheer bloody size of it all. Back when the Romans built all of what we see today, this city was actually known as Heliopolis, which means Sun City, which was named by the Greeks that came before the Romans came and took over. But this city did reach its peak, its very greatest part during the Roman Empire, at which time this would have taken more than 2 centuries to build, and straight away became one of the most famous, the most celebrated, the most incredible temple complex things in the entire Roman Empire. And what we are walking through now is from the hexagonal court into this, which is the Great Court. This place is enormous, bloody hell. I've only really been here a few minutes and immediately I can agree with the idea that this is unanimously decided as one of the finest examples of Imperial Roman architecture on our whole planet. This place is mint. Even these bits, look how intricate all this is. What's mad about all this is that there's literally nobody here. You're free to kind of roam about, walk about as you please. And here I am walking through the centre of what was the Great Court. That thing over there, I think, was a sacrificial altar, and this bit I'm wandering through now is what's left of a tower that kind of meant people could climb up it and watch said sacrifice take place. It is pretty nippy in here though, no matter. There we go, all town, aren't we? This whole thing was built here so people could come and worship what's known as the Romanized triad of Heliopolis, aka Jupiter, Venus and Mercury. And by people I mean thousands of people. It was almost like a pilgrimage site for a lot of people. It's not a bad place to trek to, is it? We're now ascending what's left of the staircase to the Temple of Jupiter, one of the wonders, one of the mysteries in fact, of the ancient world. This temple measures 48 by 88 meters, which is enormous, and was originally surrounded by 54 of these bad boys. As you can see, only 6 are left, but I think that is plenty to give us an idea of scale of the place. And on top of that, we are currently sat on like a platform about 13 meters above the surrounding area, and therein lies the mystery of this temple. But in order to discuss said mystery, we need to dig a bit further back to a time when the Phoenicians had this place. And just before we do that, I kind of want to just appreciate how gigantic those pillars actually are. This is one of the ones that will have toppled, but I mean, it's as wide as I am tall. And that would have made up them, and there would have been 54 of them. And here is a human being for scale. They are massive, bloody massive. I really hope I am doing the sheer scale of this place some justice. It is phenomenal. And not only are we at some of the most exquisite, the most celebrated, in fact the tallest Roman ruins to have ever existed in the history of the earth, which is something that most people don't expect to find in somewhere like Lebanon. But if you look over there in the distance, we have also got some snow. A long time before the Romans, they reckon this area was in fact first inhabited about 9,000 BC, making it 10 or 11,000 years old. And when the Phoenicians had it, this exact spot was used to worship the sky god Baal and Astarte, the queen of heaven. There was, of course, in old worshipping ways, an enormous, a ridiculously big temple built for Baal and for Astarte back then, but the ruins of that are buried well under this, the Temple of Jupiter. And herein lies the mystery, because those stones are cut about 4 meters by 20 meters in size, and therefore they weigh between 800 and 1,000 tons each. And they're obviously that enormous. They're 10 times bigger than any of the stones used in the Great Pyramid of Giza, by the way. No one has any idea how on earth they managed to move them, and therefore when the Romans turned up they couldn't and didn't move them. They just used them as the foundations for their temple of Jupiter. That is why it is so high off the ground, and that is why this temple is actually where it is, because they just saw these as ideal blocks of foundation. But yeah, they couldn't move them. We've got no idea either. Bloody enormous. So moving on from the Temple of Jupiter, there's lots more to see, and we've got a bit more history to discuss. So after the Phoenician witchcraft of those blocks, a long time later, Alexander the Great turned up in 334 BC, conquered the city, and that's when the Greeks renamed it Heliopolis. It stayed Greek until maybe 15 BC, when Pompey the Great then arrived, kept the name Heliopolis, but the city became part of the Roman Empire. From that point onwards, the Romans, amongst many other things, built the Temple of Jupiter as we see it today, which was... Come on, mate. It was and remained the largest and most ornate religious building in the entire Roman Empire. And then in 313 AD, Constantine the Great started legitimizing Christianity across the Roman world, which is a period in which lots of things like this were destroyed, but this survived by being Christianized and remained a Christian place of worship until those guys over there, the Muslims, turned up in 637 AD. The Byzantines came and won it back in 975 AD, but couldn't hold it very long, and it ended up in the hands of the Ottomans, aka the Turks, which is kind of when it got ignored and started falling to pieces, until 1984, when UNESCO named it a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and now we're taking much better care of it. But still, we don't know how they moved those bloody stones. The discussion about the stones, by the way, has gone on for an awfully long time. Generations and generations don't know how they managed it, because we're kind of on top of a hill at the minute, and that rules out any theories about carts or pulleys or levers or any known techniques that we have about moving big things. Everyone's a bit lost. It's even gone down to the point of people saying it was aliens, or it was put there as an alien landing pad, or whatever. Anyway, we've now arrived inside the Bacchus temple, and this is incredibly well preserved. Despite earthquakes and people taking and retaking the city, it becoming Christian, then Muslim, then Christian again, it survived everything, and it is in almost mint condition. Bacchus, by the way, was the god of wine. It's not actually confirmed that it was his temple, it's just everyone's kind of guessed that it's that. And if you like wine enough to build a temple this big, then you've got a problem. If you consider that temples with only 6 of its 54 original pillars intact is considered incredibly well preserved, or even just like look at Italy with its bits and pieces of Roman architecture that are shown off all the time. If you look at this, an entire temple almost completely intact with all of its walls and everything fairly like unscathed, then hopefully it sinks in how much of a big deal this actually is and how amazing it is for it to be in this condition. Just look at this place. Giant Temple of Jupiter there, and then just here, giant Bacchus temple. Madness. And anyway, this has been a visit to Baalbek, the world's best example of Roman architecture, largely intact, a very impressive display of what the Romans were capable of, and incredible that it still stands today after all the things that it's faced in its lifetime. I think it's also pretty incredible that the best preserved ruins of the Roman Empire are in fact in the Middle East, a place where nobody would really think to go and look for them, and that's probably why it is so well kept. Nobody's turned it into a tourist hotspot just yet, but hopefully it works for the people of Lebanon and everyone starts coming here to have a look. Leave Greece, leave Rome, come to Lebanon. It's all right, and this is way bigger and better than anything you'll see in any other country in the world. So, and the very final section of Heliopolis before we leave back to Beirut is this section over here. You can see the Temple of Mercury over there, which later became the Church of Saint Barbara. How about that? There's a Saint Barbara in the world. And just like that, I found myself bundled onto a guy's moped who bears me to the bus to get back to Beirut. So everyone's a winner. So from me and my mate Baalbek, my 10 or 11,000 year old Baalbek, and it's 2,000 year old or so mint ruins. It's been a good one this. Cheers boys, in a bit.